There is absolute magic to be found in archives. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Hinerangi Himiona taku ingoa. No konei ahau, no te ahuahu, ko ngā hapu, ko te uri Taniwha, Ngāti Hineira, Ngāti Korohue, ko parawhenua te marae. Te taho taku pāpā, ko no wainui, ko Ngāti Ruamahue te hapu. Nō reira, tēnā koe. Like any mokopuna that's connected to a place, and particularly a marae, it becomes your influence and training ground and early realities of what the world, a sort of foundation for what your world might look like. So I consider myself a Kaitiaki of Taonga Tuku iho, but I've come to the point in my life where being an archivist is actually quite, it's just a part of the practice that I do. I have whakapapa and I have a responsibility to that whakapapa to be a kaitiaki for the things that I've been exposed to, I've been privileged to care for. The cultural heritage sector is a very Pākehā idea and practice which bundles up fairly tidily all the institutions and professionals that look after what we consider to be our culture. An archivist is a person that is trained in the practice of archives management, and an archive is evidence, documentary evidence, so something written, recorded, could be a photo, could be a recording, could be a painting, something that evidences someone's life or activities, could be a business, that says this is what this person did back then those records are no longer needed for everyday use, but they are valuable, or someone deems them valuable, because they tell the story of a person, an activity or a business. So what does it mean to be an archivist and a kaitiaki? It means basically living te tiriti really, trying to uphold the aspirations of our tūpuna and also trying to benefit from the good things that Te Ao Pākehā have to bring us and fend off and dismantle those parts of the framework, of the colonial framework, of which all of our cultural heritage institutions have been founded, dismantle those bits that are no good for us, that keep us in glass cases and keep us removed from our culture. So one of the really outstanding projects that I was a part of whilst working for Auckland University was the Māori Land Court Minute Books Index project, which included Māori Land Court Minute Books from 1865 when the court began, right up to, at that time, 1910. So every book was indexed, tūpuna names, place names, block names and things like that. So I was on the steering group, I didn't do all the work, but we did have to form up the framework for that indexing to be done. And I suppose in terms of being involved in Waitangi Tribunal claims 15, 20 years later when I came home, that experience of working with generally Māori research resources is pretty incredible as a librarian and an archivist. But particularly that Māori Land Court Minute Book Indexing project really gave a great grounding for just how hard it is for our people to find evidence of what happened to them and why, in terms of the information that was recorded in the court, let alone the stuff that wasn't recorded, which was the context of them coming to court in those years to defend, to try and claim, to try and manage relations that were claiming stuff that wasn't theirs. So I think my experience in terms of a researcher of Waitangi Tribunal claims primary information is quite significant because of those years and my privilege of being an archivist and a librarian in an institution. Māori, we specialise and we have a whole bunch of devices, oratory, waiata, as an example, whakapapa, mahi toi. We have a whole bunch of devices that make sure that we remember who we are, where we come from, what has infiltrated our DNA to be who we are. So we specialise in remembering who we are and where we come from. Te ao Pākehā who have come here and forsaken their homelands have a bit of a specialty in forgetting. And I think that I've come to the point in my career as an archivist and as a Kaitiaki of Taonga to be really clear about that that's a fundamental difference that is actually quite hard to bring together. But we need to sort that out. We need to sort that out because until we can appreciate that fundamental difference of wanting to forget some stuff and leave that, I think it's one of the reasons why we get accused of bringing that old stuff up and just let it go. We're not built like that, and we shouldn't think that we have been, otherwise we might as well. And some of our whanaunga have kind of gone, never mind all that whakapapa and all that heebie-jeebie stuff. Actually, we need to, going forward, we need to contextualise for our generations going forward that actually without that, he tangata noa koe, you just are whatever in the world, you're just floating in the ether. Tangata whenua, which is what we claim to be our unique position in the world, has got its place, and we need to figure out how not to be challenged and be encouraged to just be something floating around wherever's. So I worked on the He Tohu exhibition, which is in the National Library in Wellington now. The exhibition opened in 2017, so it's a few years old now, and we're able to look back and see how successful or not we've been. But was an absolute and will always be a highlight of my life to be able to work on that project. Having been involved in Archives New Zealand, our national archives, my entire career, I've always known that he whakaputanga and te tiriti were down in Wellington. Have known perhaps more intimately than most that the care that was provided, particularly for the Waitangi sheet, was awful. And when I worked in Wellington as a Māori manager in the early 2000s, the Constitution Room, which was the vault that He Whakaputanga and Te Tiriti and other important archives were kept, was one of the places that I would often go down and visit, kind of as a touch base with my tūpuna to say, what am I doing here? What's my role in this place? And to be invited to help develop, conceptualise and build a new space for He Whakaputanga and Te Tiriti. The women's suffrage petition is also a part of He Tohu, but, and that's really important of course, but closest to my heart was absolutely He Whakaputanga and Te Tiriti. So He Tohu is an exhibition of those three iconic national documents, or covenants. And my role on that was as my title was Principal Māori Advisor, which I thought when I started there was really flash, until I got to Wellington and realised that every second person is a Principal Advisor in Wellington. But that's okay. Whatever the title was, it was my absolute honour as a mokopuna of signatories and as from Ngāpuhi as well as Ngāti Toa. Being a descendant of Te Rangi Tōpioara, Mātene Te Whiwhi, Ngāti Toa, Ngāti Huia, helped me negotiate my role down there with the support of my Ngāti Raukawa, Ngāti Toa whānau down there, alongside Te Atiawa whānau as well. So it was an absolute and will always be a highlight of my entire life being involved with those kawenata. It's not over yet though, because I still have to come home. Do our Taonga Māori, He Whakaputanga and Te Tiriti, for example, do they need to reside in Wellington? No people, let alone our people, should be visitors to their identity. They shouldn't have to ask permission to find out who they are. They shouldn't have to visit cultural heritage institutions like the Auckland Museum, National Archives. They shouldn't have to go there and shouldn't be encouraged that that's the norm. What is that? You know, what is that someone else controls someone else's identity? Part of my role is to change that practice where if you want to know where you're from or who your history is, you have to go to the library. That's not how it should be. And that there are some, I guess they're basic human rights that have been denied many of us by taking that information, putting it in a book, interpreting it, and then putting it on a shelf or on a screen and saying, we've got all this stuff, we really, you really need to come and visit us. Actually, no, we don't. No, we don't. It shouldn't be there under someone else's control in the first place. So I think that there's some really basic identity information that needs to be back in the hearts, minds and souls of our people. Don't leave it for institutions to tell your kids who they are. And that means that parents have to learn. It means replacing that information into families so that it becomes normal from birth that we talk about and we come to these places like our marae, our kāinga, and that we interact with relations so that we're not leaving it for institutions, particularly Pākehā institutions, to teach us who we are. What I'm saying is that I think that there are a couple of steps. One is that we need to undo our expectation that when we want to find something out about ourselves, that we must go outside of ourselves to find that. We actually need to replace, and we're doing that now through whānau wānanga, reo revitalisation, mahi toi, whakapapa wānanga happening way, way more than they've ever happened ever before, and they're on the rise. So we are beginning to replace our own institutions, I suppose, our own Māori institutions. That's great. This whole idea of independence, we need to learn and start doing things that make us independent of those institutions, and that's one of them is taking back our definition of who we are. I couldn't live if I didn't live at home, quite simply. So it's important for my ability to function, to have my feet at home, to be able to visit, collect kai, grow kai. I'm not a massive gardener, but it's so important to be able to know that that soil, that whenua, is where your generations before you sustained themselves from. Being a mokopuna that was brought up by my mother's parents, my grandparents and their generation, and being brought up on this marae, absolutely, and of course it's going to shape who you grow up to be and how you grow up to be. One of the main influences in my formative years as a baby is my mother's mother, Ngā Roimata Raiha Ruhe, who maiden name was Hita. She was from the other side of Kaikohe, o Korohue and Te Kotahitanga Marae. And so Nan was an educator, a real, from what I understand, she loved to talk and she had time to talk as a young woman, so she became really close with all the kaumatuas and kuias around here. She wasn't particularly great at housework and stuff, so Pop would go to work and come home and she'd still be in her pyjamas and still drinking cups of tea with the kanis that had come to visit. So my grandmother was a real people person. So, I don't think she would have described herself as this, but because she was a people person, she valued relationships, she knew how people were connected, and I think that absolutely rubbed off on me and my generation. Coming into the cultural heritage information sector was absolutely down to my grandmother Ruamahue, going to all those kohanga reo hui and all those national library hui with my grandmother Ruamahue, Auntie Rewa Marsh, Auntie Mabel Waititi, in the 80s as a teenager, kind of had me thinking about, that's quite a cool place to work. We really do need to encourage and advocate for, I suppose, that those special people from within our whānau, hapu and marae that are creatives, that think outside the box, that have a God-given talent to express our identity as it was in the past, as it might be in the future, as it currently is, to hold our stories. It's so important, supporting and promoting and advocating for our creatives, because they are the ones that hold our truth. They are the ones that were criminalised, that were mocked, that were and are criticised by cultures outside of our own and our own culture for being out there. They are the ones that have the special talent that are able to hold our truth and to tell our stories and to hold our stories, express them in different ways, traditional and current and contemporary ways. Not all of our mātauranga resides in institutions, but much of it does. The extent of which I don't think we appreciate, because we haven't been able to, I suppose, fling the doors open on those stacks and vaults that holds all that information. So in terms of Kaitiaki and cultural heritage professionals like myself, we really do need to work and make an effort to work more closely with creatives so that they can get access to Taonga Tuku manuscripts that were written last century and the century before that, talk about that, name, give language to different types of processes, different types of wood, different cuts, different adzes, different plants, colours, to, as an example, begin to replace the vocabulary that we no longer have in te ao toi. There is absolute magic to be found in archives. The colonial objective around the world is a well-oiled machine, and it's worked a treat on our people. And in this day and age, fortunately, we have clever people like Waina Jackson, Linda Smith, all those academics that have and continue, Manuka Hinari, continue to help provide us with understanding as to what the formula was, how we've got to where we are, how we can begin to undo that, which I think is amazing. And that a lot of that kōrero is found in our public record, our archives. One thing good about New Zealand and other places, but we're talking about Aotearoa, is that while a lot of the Māori information has not been kept or gathered by our government, our Crown government over time, much of it has, and we've got a reasonably good record of how the Crown engaged with Māori, which is why the Waitangi Tribunal process and mahi is a huge love-hate relationship with people like me that go, oh, well, at least it was written down. And then the other part of me is going, it shouldn't have even happened to be written down. So you go, and people like me that have the skills to get into those records and find them for people that can then do something with them are so few and far between. Yeah, we do need to train more people and identify in families. I say to people, if you have a little tutu in your family that is a bookworm or wanting to hang around, when we talk about the photos, there's always, not always, but whenever there's a young one that hangs around that stuff, don't boot them away, don't boot them outside, because they're going to be your next ones. Yeah, really look after them. And I really look out for those young ones that hang around this stuff, because I know what it's like when I was a kid, to be curious and to be told, oh, you just get to school, no more tangies for you. Having an appreciation for those things that are not seen, our tupuna and wairua, shouldn't prevent us from doing that stuff, but we do need to be deliberate and conscious that that's the other half, not just another part, it's actually the other half of the work that's happening here. And in the sector, they know about that, but it's not their place. It's not their place as archivists, librarians, Pākehā trained people cannot take care of that and cannot and should not be the people that authorise that access for us. Yeah, there's a bit more to be thought about and said about that, but I think that's what sets us as Māori Kaitiaki apart from professionals. You got both sides, which is kind of what I meant at the beginning. It's kind of like a living tiriti relationship. You get all the technical, Pākehā side of things that are really good tools, but holding on to our whakapapa and our te ao Māori side of things, our mātauranga, pulling those things together. So it makes us all the better for it.